Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our fourth and final panel discussions for the 7th edition of Spark, hosted at the Peel Museum through this weekend. So if you haven't, make sure you stop by. The Peel is open 10 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. And tomorrow we have a workshop at 11 a.m. and a wonderful performance at 2, possibly. So it's your last chance to see it. If not, all of our discussions are recorded and will live on the sparkbaltimore.org website. All right, well, welcome everyone. We have 4 wonderful artists here, so go ahead and start with Eric with some brief introductions.
Sure, I'll throw you a brief introduction here. I am Eric Milliken. I am currently a assistant professor of visual arts that includes experimental animation and interactive media at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And then my work in the Spark exhibition includes wearable sculptures that are made with marine biological materials, including algae and crushed oyster shells, and they're all have robotic motor parts and lights, and they interact with sounds and things like that. So great to be here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eunice Hong, and I'm an undergraduate studying interdisciplinary object design at Towson University. And in the Spark exhibition created by Liz Faust, I have a 12-lamp installation piece hanging in the Peel Museum. So very nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Alexi Scheiber. I am an experimental animator, and my MFA thesis, Awake Dreaming, is shown in installation form at the Peel.
Hi, I'm Dara Lorenzo, and I'm an adjunct professor at TU and Goucher, and I have 2 pieces. One is Up in the Willows, a silk screen print, and the other is Old Town Mall, and it's a screen printed installation book. Thank you.
Excellent. That was perfect amount. So first question to start off our conversation today. What does dreaming forward mean to you personally, and how does that concept manifest in your work? Who wants to start?
I can
Go
start.
Ahead. Yep.
Okay. Dreaming forward speaks to me, speaks to the future and how the present and the past will influence the future. I think it speaks to how it's manifested. So.
I think this is perfect for Lexi.
Yeah, dreaming is a major, it's a title throughout my body of thesis work, and something that I'm engaging with as somewhat of a political and artistic philosophy. So for me, and for like the driving force of the work was the idea of dreaming as conscious imagining with goals towards creating the future I wanted to live in. And that was the basis of the animation, was looking around lived in real spaces and thinking like, okay, well, if we solve the climate crisis, things aren't going to look like this. Like, we have a lot of visions of apocalyptic futures. We have a lot of visions of things getting a lot worse, but really sparse visions of creating harmonious and restorative spaces. So I think dreaming manifests in a lot of different ways throughout my work, but that was the base of the visual, like the initial driving visual force.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here. I'll say, for me, maybe similar to the previous two artists who were talking, but there's an element of dreaming of a future that's informed by the past, that's maybe different than our own, and having multiple dreams of what that might be. But then also thinking through in this particular work and in a lot of my work, there's a point when I was there was a point when I was learning foreign languages where I think somebody explained to me the point, well, you really know this language is when you start to dream in it, right? And then I work with computer code, creative coding, and so the point where I started to dream in code, to me, that was the point where I started to understand code. And so in these projects, there's this element of me dreaming of a different future, trying to share that dream with others to get them to dream about it, but then also me, I'm like going 3 levels deep in the Inception dream world here, where like if I dream of a code, then wake up and create that code where I make an AI that creates its own dream based on that, and then they tell it back to me. I don't know, you get this interesting loop of dreaming going on, maybe, that then I get to invite other people to join in on.
I agree with that, and I think that's a very insightful perspective on the concept of dreaming forward. To me personally, dreaming forward focuses mainly on the recollection of past memories, or even with interaction with those with past experiences coming together with experiences in the moment. And through my piece, particularly the 12 lamps, there are areas where you can reflect and see your own reflection. And if the audience or the viewer were to be able to enter this space, it will create a dream, allowing people to reminisce and be able to share each other's stories. And so through the lamps, I mainly focus on more the visual aspect and element of allowing us to see each other, allow us to recollect and experience the moment.
Excellent. So I'm actually going to jump a question and speak directly to Dara. Dara, your installations collapse temporal boundaries to create kind of generational time loops. How do you think about memory as both a material and a method of dreaming forward, and thinking perhaps a little about your process of making these prints?
Yeah, so paper is an important material that reflects memory for me. I use paper in journal entries from my past and collage them into the prints I am making in the present. I feel this process collapses those time periods and moments together. So paper keeps a record of experiences that can influence the future, in my opinion.
How do you normally go about making your prints?
So, well, these pieces are a little bit different, but they're screen printed, but I went out and I did some rubbings of like the facades of the area for the Old Town Mall piece. And so the rubbings I actually exposed into a screen and just kind of printed them over top of each other, over top of each other, over top of each other in like a pattern that wasn't uh, moving. It was like kind of all around the paper, right? And both sides. So we had you could see like something where you would look ahead of you and would look down towards your feet. So it was kind of about that discovery and walking through the area.
Mhm.
And then I sewed the edges. I don't know. That was just a process decision where I was trying to figure out how to make these feel kind of like an object more than just paper, but something that was maybe a relic.
Mhm. Excellent. And then Alexi, your animations, as you said, envision post-industrial spaces rewild with lush growth. How do you use animation and installation to reimagine what cities could become, not just structurally, but ecologically and emotionally?
Okay, cool. The sharing worked. This is a still from the animation. So there was both a lot of research going into existing practical climate solutions. So I think like structurally, like I'm gonna kind of be a little contrary with the question. I think the structures we live in determine our norms, determine what we think is good and possible. So the act of changing the structures creates a possibility of new relations to space and each other. So in this still, there's a gas station around the corner of where I live, and I have turned it into a repair shop. And technically there is a bus stop, but it's like one sad bench. So I expanded out into this, and this still is taken kind of in the middle of the process of like painting and animating this world in. So the bus stop becomes this Art Nouveau inspired, really big structure that's a shelter and has charging ports and has like a community board of resources. As I was collecting, so the base of this project was just reference footage that I took with my smartphone of spaces that I was around and thinking like, this space is kind of pathetic. And some of them are plain suburban spaces. Some of them are a little more what we would associate with things that are sort of ugly or embarrassing about American architecture, like gas stations. Yeah, like so many spaces, it was very easy to stop and find something like a space that had no people. Like we have so few pedestrians. So bringing in, as much as like this was a really heavy part of the work, was bringing in the character animation at the end, but bringing in people and nature coexisting with an urban space is just something that's so rare in this country, and particularly in Maryland. So I think that's my answer. I can stop sharing, but
No,
the structures are our emotions. Does that make sense?
it does. And I think too, it's interesting when we consider that your work is not just animations, but it's a full installation with kind of built structures and with these whimsical things made into our 3D space that we're invited to come and sit down in to inhabit as well. So it's not only are we seeing these ideal spaces, but we're invited to inhabit one for a short time.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because the butterflies, they're so small. And so to scale in the shots in the animation was hard to incorporate them. But actually researching, like I realized that I didn't really know a lot about what bugs were native. I was seeing so many spotted lanternflies the past 2 years. And if you see them, squash them still. There are bats that are learning to eat them, but they're still really not naturalized, and they still are a really big problem. And I was like, I'm seeing spotted lanternflies everywhere. What bugs am I supposed to be seeing? So all of those hand-painted butterflies, there's some moths, there's some hummingbirds, and there's some bees. They are all real species that in their immigration patterns come through Maryland. Like they have, all of these species have like really huge immigration patterns, which is also something I find really interesting when we think about like native, so like monarch butterflies, and there's a monarch. There's also a Baltimore checker spot, which is our state bug, which I just love. The sort of state bugs and animals. I think they're really charming and a nice way to like get to know about native species. So there's a checker spot and a monarch butterfly in the image up there, and monarch butterflies go all the way from Mexico to Canada. So we're just one stop in their path. So I think butterflies are such a beautiful lens to think about borders and the artificiality of them. And that is a big part of the way like our human world and reconnecting to nature can teach us to not only be more harmonious with nature, but with each other.
Excellent. Perfect. Now, on the other end, hopping to Eric, your work kind of uses AI to bring kind of extinct marine life into speculative being. What role does machine vision or digital necromancy play in building alternative ecological futures? And is AI a tool for mourning, storytelling, or resurrection, or all three?
Yeah, I'm going to go with all three on that. Yes. And I'll say that's one of the things that, among the many things that interest me in our long history of artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence artwork, is the broad range of things that have been done with it and that can be done with it. And then, of course, get interested in what hasn't been done yet. But this, questions about necromancy, this is, one I tend to think of all artwork is often a attempt at immortality, trying to make something that might live beyond us. But then also in these projects, trying to use, like, for example, I made a AI system that's based on public domain photos from the US government, from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, of nearly extinct eastern oysters. They're at 1% of their population compared to when European settlers and colonists arrived here in North America, but then created a artificial intelligence that tries to understand those, uses machine vision to look at those, photography of them, as well as the parasitic oysters that attack them, as well as self-portrait photography for myself. So trying to create this sort of three species ecosystem, and think about the interrelations between them, as well as possible combinations and mutations that combine them all together. And then besides the machine vision aspect of writing programs that look at images and try to make sense of them and try to explain them back to us, these projects also have a machine listening system to them. So machine hearing, where they're listening to each other as robotic gears grind and things like that. They're listening to live coded music that's part of this installation, and then listening to those sounds, learning from them, trying to categorize them, and then respond and react to them. And then they also slowly forget, which is maybe one of my favorite things, because we tend to make computer systems that have memories that we intend to, again, last forever and outlive us. We hope that our computers never die sometimes, but instead I try to make systems that can slowly forget and then learn things anew and be surprised, because that's part of the learning process that I get interested in. So yeah, what we're seeing on the screen here, this is a spiraling animation based on looking at oyster shells, photography of oyster shells, and this gets into history and pasts and futures. But this is a 1830s, beginning 1830s animation system, which was the phenakistoscope, which is sort of like a flip book, but instead of flipping through pages, you would spin a wheel to make animations. And it was even weirder than that. People would look at them in mirrors in order to get reflections. But this is me using fairly new technology, fairly recently possible technology, and combining it with fairly older, and often try to get into even more ancient technologies and combine them all together to create things with long histories that may even have longer histories after that. So as far as a tool for mourning, storytelling, and resurrection, part of this is, yes, definitely trying to create things that, resurrect old media, resurrect old strategies, and then think about how we might use them and adapt them and mutate them into the future. And this is my listening and then talking back to you, robotic oyster shell. So this is, refer to this as necrobotics, creating robots out of dead things, right? So we're taking the remains of oysters and resurrecting them and having them try to make sense of our world and then explain it back to us in a little bit of a way. So the oyster opens and closes their mouth and lights up in responses to sounds that they hear. I'll say all of these, I made these as part of an artist residency. I was the Circa IMET artist in residence. That's Circa, which is part of UMBC, and IMET, which is the Institute of Marine and Environmental Technology, which is University of System Maryland-wide marine biologists. And so all of these are based on simultaneously research of IMET marine biologists, but also Edgar Allan Poe stories. And so I'll briefly explain this one here, which is titled MS Found in a Bottle, which is the title of a Edgar Allan Poe short story. In his short story, The MS in a Bottle is a manuscript that the main character is supposedly writing, that they're going to, you know, they're narrator writing the story. They're going to toss the bottle overboard, and when they die their mysterious and strange tragic death at the end. But for me, the MS in a bottle could be anything with an MS. So I made a mechanical slime in that bottle that listens and dances and creates light and shadow patterns on the wall as an animation. So yeah, that's my MS found in a bottle. So yeah. And I could talk about necromancy and AI and memorials and mourning all day. So I will pass the mic.
Perfect. That's fantastic. So I think it would be great next to go to Eunice. Your neural networks suggest a tenderness that contrasts the dominant narratives around AI. How do you think of artificial systems as potential sites for intimacy, empathy, and or emotional reparation?
Yes. I believe that artificial systems, or such as the 12 lamp installation that I have installed in the museum, open the door for room for people to share like intimate emotion and empathy, and even emotional repairing as well. These lamps, I'll first go into like how these lamps were created. I laser cut out panels and etched on an image of my own retina, and through this way we can see like all the veins, the neural like forms that are etched onto the surface. And through this way I am exploring this concept of intimacy of through my own eye and through the image and the fragments of my retina. I'm opening my own personal, I guess, my own personal information about myself to others. And I'm through that way, I am also translating room for empathy as well, and even allowing people to feel a sense of reconnecting with something of their past through the reflection of their own self. But this piece was inspired by mirrored neurons, affective empathy, and the 6 degrees of separation. And you can see the relationships of these neurons dancing on these clear acrylic sheets. And they appear as if they're reaching for each other, just as how we as humans are reaching for a connection, especially in the age of AI, which it could create like a boundary or barrier between us and technology. In some sense, I'm trying to bridge that gap, showcasing that through the techniques of digital fabrication, through the reimagination of, through the redefining of what craft is, I am trying to translate this idea of emotional connectiveness through intimate light, through intimate motion and perception as well. I also have my own presentation that you just quickly. Could you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is the space, and this is me posing in front of the work itself. But this is a short video of the work. Like I mentioned before, I am raising the concept in question of, are we yearning for a connection? As this piece called Who We Are has a total of 12 lamps, one can be able to, once again, recollect or think about a past memory or even reimagine a possible future. What might I want to be, or how do I want to change, or even just appreciate how much I've come here just as a person. But through this way, through your own individual reflection and meditation, I was hoping, or I hope that this piece also expands, allowing for effective empathy, allowing for this piece to speak to more of the viewers and allow for us to even just connect with each other. So these are some images here, some close-ups. Please. And this is just a quick description of more of the piece itself. I was also very interested in the concepts of what does a deja vu feel like if you met someone again after a really long time, or even the phrase, what a small world. These concepts and these questions were very interesting to me and probably allowed me to gravitate more towards creating a warm and welcoming space to the blue light, allowing for this area of meditation and reflection. And so, like I mentioned here in this work, light passes through the panels and reflects the engraved images of my own retina to the surroundings, to the people, to each other, and they're connected through these physical forms of these neurons. And so finding inspiration from mirrored neurons in itself, I was exploring this concept of how we understand each other through our own like shared emotions, which blue is commonly associated with the calmness and just happiness in general, giving it more of a warm welcome. And through this way, as an artist, I try to embody the deep connectedness that we feel as not only as just humans and each other, but through artists and as creatives. And so I am very interested in transforming the static or individual pieces to more dynamic sensory installation like spaces, where I'm very interested in transforming the space through the emotional presence of light and intimacy and empathy.
Excellent. So I have a question for Dara and Eunice. Both of you made new works for this show, actually, brand new pieces. How did the show and or the space impact the work? I think both of you experienced a little bit of that.
I'll speak first. Well, I was making so the book installations were new for me, and so I kind of didn't know how I wanted to hang the book, or if I wanted to hang the book, or if I wanted to sew the book all together and have it, collapse and open up or whatever. But the space has a very tall ceiling, so I figured it would be nice to hang the pages as you saw the pieces kind of just informing each other that way, like hanging from the ceiling. So I thought that was a cool revelation of how to hang the work and just see it from all sides because it's printed on both sides. And I like how I don't work in sculpture very much or bookmaking, honestly. I usually just like print on paper. So, so seeing it from, be able to walk around it like you would a sculpture, I feel like was really nice with the space. Um, the other piece, I feel like is more of a regular installation for me. So, thank you.
I guess for me, I initially came to Liz Faust with, I think, 3 lamps or 4 lamps. And it was all on the floor, and I was telling Liz about the emotional connectiveness of these lamps, and she suggested, why not dream bigger? why stop at only 3? I did not know about like the actual size of the room. And so I went from 3 to 12 after she told me this entire room is your piece. So reimagine it, not only just in a straight line, but what if it's going up and down? What if you have certain areas where people can walk through? Reimagine the piece, more or less. So it was a decision made quite soon relative to the exhibition opening date, but I think it overall like delivered a much more stronger presence than when I first presented it to the curator, which allowed it to increase the more sensory experience, which I'm incredibly grateful for. So yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and it was truly an installation piece. It was quite it was intensive to install, but you guys did a fantastic job. All of you did a fantastic job. Now, many of your works reimagine infrastructure, not just physical systems, but emotional, ecological, and cultural. And how do you define repair in your work, if you do it all? Is it poetic, political, practical, or even present?
I'll jump in here, and I'm gonna give an instant reaction riff here to the last part of this question about how we define repair. And I'll say that I have a background in sculpture, and I tend to think about where my first sculptural experiences began, and I'm going to say that they were repairing cars with my father when I was a kid, right? And so I think that there's this in my work. There's this long line of repairing things as a form of sculpture, and then constantly making sculptures you have to repair, and sculptures that you're not sure that they're even going to hold together, and you're trying to make sure that they either survive for a 30-minute performance, or that they survive for a month-long show or something like that. And so repairing as a practice is very, very deep in my work. And then I also tend to think about the politics of that repair, particularly in cultures where you either repair things or you buy new things, right? And that's a political economic act of whether you get to make that decision or not, or whether you're constantly repairing things, right? And so then in the work that's in the Spark show here, they're simultaneously thinking about how we might repair an ecosystem. I mentioned that we have 1% of the oysters that we had when European colonists came to North America, and that's something that is actually in the code of a lot of the robotics that I'm doing. Anytime there was I wanted to insert a random chance that something might happen, it was always a 1% chance. And so there's a little bit of a monument to the 1% that remain, and a memorial to the 99% that are no longer with us. But then thinking about how we might change that and repair that. And so one of my secret goals here is that I might possibly be able to go back to my code someday and change that to a 2% or a 3% or a 4%. As we repair an ecosystem, I can repair code and repair my own sculptures here. This one that Liz has the slide up here. And I'll say this is another part of repairing. This is shown here as a sculpture, but this is a wearable sculpture. It's made to wear on your forearm. It's a sleeve. So that's also thinking through our interrelationships with these, how close we can be to these, and then also can we make them parts of us, and can we repair them, and how might they repair our own bodies if they were more closely attached to us. And this is the title of this one is I think it's The Conqueror Worm, which is based on the Edgar Allan Poe poem The Conqueror Worm, but it's also the parasitic worms that attack oysters in the Chesapeake Bay. So this is my dancing parasitic worms of light on a sleeve made out of algae and crushed oyster shells. So they're dancing on the crushed remains of the oysters that they have conquered. And then, yeah, how might we repair that? Yeah.
Excellent.
If I can jump in. as I've said, I view my work as very political. It has an imperative of looking around and giving myself permission. I like that you gave kind of Eunice permission to dream bigger. My work was giving myself that permission. I think in the prison abolition world, which is theory I began to research, reparative justice is often synonymous with terms of restorative justice and transformative justice. And I think those words of restorative and transformative are all sort of a spectrum. And the act of repair is inherently an act of transformation. It's very rare that something is exactly as it was before. And in a lot of cases of ecological restoration, unfortunately, it's very hard to bring back systems and biomes exactly as they were, but often ecologists can find species to fill a similar ecological niche. And then, so even though my work kind of optimistically is trying to look at like as many native species as possible, if you look at plants very closely in the animation, they're not all they're all broadly like native to the Americas, but they're not all initially native to Maryland. So I think transformation and that sort of abolitionist lens of what would it look like if we completely dismantled and built new structures as form of repair instead of like band-aiding existing. And for the butterflies, a lot of them, if you look up close, they're made with like scrap fabric. And some of them are made with paper pulp paper that I had pulped and made myself from recycled paper. So these objects, a lot of the scrap fabric is synthetic or polyester. We're finding more and more problems with not only like polyester and synthetic waste in landfills, but also just like the act of like how we wash polyester, like how much of it is in how much plastic is in our closets and our lives as like a somewhat toxic substance as it degrades. The average person has like a spoonful of microplastics in their blood, I think. So making use of this object that is like in future societies, if we have a future restorative society, they might see this as like our generation's version of like the cigarette, of that level of deadliness. But giving those materials a space to transform and be a part of imagining the future was part of the repair in my work.
Eunice or Dara?
I honestly don't really think my work is about repair, but more of a reflection of like the disrepair and the ruins and how things are currently. So I think it's more about contemplation of how they got that way, and maybe kind of like if you think about the city of Rome and like looking at the past, and even though it's not great, like like celebrating what was in the past or the structures in the past, and I think it's interesting to have other structures kind of erupt around the structures that are kind of like ruins in the city. So that's what I would say about repair for me.
I think for me, it also doesn't really focus more on the repair, but more or less on the aftermath of the repair. Um, Interestingly enough, the piece itself has fragments of my retina, but a year prior, I had like a welding accident, and I went to the eye doctor, and they did like a digital scan of the retina, which they told me that it was fine. My retina's okay. But during the entire thought process and just undergoing the act of just going to the office and like having them scan my retina and having to be explained like what part of my retina um, might have been susceptible to possible damage or something like this, um, it brought in a lot of like fear, but also in the sense I transformed that fear from that experience, and then I embodied my installation based off of that experience in some ways. And so I do believe that in some regards, that past experience, more relatively intimate to me, influenced this piece, allowing this piece to be more of like a reflection and a memory that it captured in my own work. And so in that way, I do believe that like the repair aspect is not like quite strong, but it did reflect itself in the piece in some regards. So I do hope that when others look at it, it might evoke a different emotion, or maybe even a similar emotion of past memories or even the current.
Fantastic. All right, next question. If you could plant one imaginative seed in viewers' minds through this exhibition, what would you hope it grows into? I'm curious to see what you say. You're still muted.
I have to think about that one for a second. Sorry. Just give me somebody else can go first and then I'll.
Who wants to take that one? Go ahead, Alexi.
A piece as part of my MFA exhibit that actually wasn't in the show was a very literal version of this, where I was giving out, I had made seed paper with native wildflower seeds and lines from the script of the animation for people to take and plant wherever they wanted. But with that piece, as well as the overall body of work, I hope people feel that they have a stake in living a better life. I think a lot of us have a tendency to remove ourselves. People will use statements like there is no ethical consumption under capitalism as an excuse to like not do anything, or use a feeling of their own powerlessness as an excuse to be really stagnant. So with my work, there is a very strong desire to connect to people of wanting better for themselves. So even if they're not envisioning the exact world that I'm envisioning, having a little bit of a sense of empowerment, even if that is just the empowerment to imagine deserving a better life and not just wallowing in actionlessness and despair.
All right, I'll throw into this, and I somewhat hesitate to give this answer, but this is, sometimes there's trick questions. I feel like I'm giving the trick answer to this, but a previous project of mine, or current project of mine, that in addition to this one, as I work with carnivorous plants and crossbreeding and cloning them. And in the act of crossbreeding them, of course, you create seeds. And part of the interest of mine there is to crossbreed the strangest carnivorous plants that I have, to try to get the strangest seeds that you can. And so I'm going to say part of that is getting, your hope for that seed is that it's surprising and it's strange and it's wonderful and it's what you didn't expect. And so I guess that's my cop-out answer of saying I hope that the seed that I plant grows into something I don't know and don't expect and am surprised by, and super happy to see strange, new, unusual things in the world. Yes.
I think that's an excellent answer.
Okay, I'll take a stab at this. What an imaginative seed could grow into. I said, just to be more open and present in general as people in our spaces and in the world, and be open to discovery and contemplation. Think about others' experiences and lives.
Perfect. And Eunice, I'm curious to see what you want viewers to take away from your piece.
Interesting. It's a very interesting question, but I do hope that viewers do come into the piece or walk into the space with more of like a childlike curiosity and innocence. And that's where it kind of ties in with Darrow's response with openness, but I want them to be curious, bring in their own interpretations. Even on opening night, people have told me, oh, it looks like a certain monster or like a small little alien, like on those neuron waves, or oh my gosh, this reminds me of like a hat. For those who are like younger, that couldn't see their own reflection, they would like stand under the lights and be like, oh my gosh, it's a hat. But then there's some people that would like look and really deeply meditate, and maybe although I wasn't able to ask, it might have evoked a certain memory or like certain thought of wow, either this reminds me of, and then blank, or this just creates this memory here in general. So yes, it's nice.
Excellent. Okay. Final question before we open up to the audience. Do you guys have questions for each other? Because your pieces are very different. Out of all the panel discussions, you guys vary the greatest content form wise, but I still see a thread connecting your pieces in my brain. So what are you curious about each other's piece?
Eunice, I can't remember if you touched on this, but how does illumination play into your concepts?
Concept as in just the installation piece?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a very interesting perspective, which is a very strong element in the piece itself, because I think it ties heavily with the color as well, with the blue. Like I mentioned before, blue allows people to feel more of a sense of empathy and more gravitating towards being open and being like calm, and having this more sensory openness to being accepting of all these 12 lamps and not having it be so overwhelming. But illumination in itself is the idea of just sharing the space, delivering the light, and the concept of light allows people to connect with each other. And I think that ties in with my with effective empathy, with the mirror neurons, 6 degrees of separation. We're all connected through the light. And so I wanted us to be connected in that way.
I also have a question for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
When I saw your piece in person, I didn't know about the retina, and I was thinking so much about nature as an ongoing theme in the exhibit. I felt such a strong connection with both like the connecting pieces and like the color and texture of it all to water. And I'm wondering if there is a connection to empathy and water. Like, do you see any relationship to water in your work?
Sure, yes. When I was making the piece, that was not something that I considered. And interestingly enough, the photographer or videographer taking the photo and video told me that it reminded him of the sky. So I was very intrigued with, interesting. It evokes very different emotions. And it's, I appreciate you telling me that you thought of water. But connecting with me as well, water to me is very intimate and allows me to remain calm and really like reflect. I feel like I'm in my own space when I'm in water because I used to swim. So like just swimming and just being alone with my thoughts, surrounded just by water and the muted voices, it's very calming in a lot of ways. So I do see there's a reflection and there's a similarity with how I react with water, or how I interact with water with my piece. Thank you.
I'm going to say, Liz, you saying that we're, of all the talks, the most different from each other. I'm going to take that as high praise. So I'm going to, so maybe my question for, and maybe I'll ask this of Dara, but anybody can answer this. But how you think about when you were saying that you made some new decisions, did some new types of things, that did a more sculptural installation than you may have done in the past. And so my question for you, or maybe for anybody who wants to jump in, but is how, as you're making new work, you think of making things that are new and different, and then even, maybe even like what's next kind of stuff.
I think that what's next is kind of like always what I'm thinking about after each group of artwork that I make, or each series. So I'm always trying to kind of like push the boundary a little bit, but also stay true to what I feel that I'm good at, but like evolving that in a way. But yeah, so it feels so there's an aspect of feeling worried or scared, or like maybe this isn't going to translate, but I think the act of like pushing yourself into those directions or realms is important for expanding your practice and the way you're thinking about your work, right?
Yes, thank you.
Mm.
Anybody else? Curious how Alexi and Eunice feel about that.
I am just starting to gestate in the what's next. This was my MFA thesis. I started it a little earlier than required in order to be able to complete like the scope of the project, which was quite ambitious. So doing a little bit of recovering from burnout. But in my own practice, I think I need space between engaging with so my undergraduate thesis also had like big environmentalist themes. It was entitled The Love Letter for the End of the World, and it was about being a young person born into the climate crisis. So there was a big stretch before this work and doing a big environmentalist piece again. I think grappling with those themes like demands so much of you, like mentally, emotionally. This piece was really research heavy, so I'd like to do something a little more indulgent before doing my next big climate piece, because like it's themes that are really important to me. I think like the continued survival of our planet is important to everyone, even if it isn't a prominent part of their artistic practice. And I understand why it's not part of more people's artistic practices, because it really does demand a lot of you. Yeah, so I think it's also good as an artist to be really indulgent sometimes. So that's my next goal, is to just be really indulgent in what is like joyful about art making for me.
I guess for me, throughout undergrad, my approach to thinking about projects was very concept-based. So for this piece particularly, it was for a class called Materials at Towson University. And instructors there gave out a prompt about light. And I was very interested in this concept through the lens of mirror neurons, how we're all connected, like neuroscience-based or social psychology, affective empathy. And through this way, I was also inspired by Druid design through the lamps and how it could be reflective, but then also allowing for reflection. So in this way, it was very interesting. It's my first installation, and I've learned that my pieces could not only just explore the conservation of identity, which appears in a lot of my works, but have it be transformative of the space that allows the viewers to interact with and interpret in their own way. So in that way, I do see myself expanding upon this idea, of perception and on this idea of identity and protection.
Fantastic. Any other questions from anyone watching? You can go ahead and put type it straight into the comments. Hope all 4 of you are feeling great about the exhibition. The work looks fantastic. And again, if you haven't done so, please feel free to stop by today and tomorrow, 10 to 4 p.m. at the Peel. And tomorrow we have a workshop and a live performance. Excellent. Okay, I think that's wonderful. Thank you again. And we will see you on hopefully around town and hopefully at the Peel.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.